Good evening. I'd like to call the special meeting for the Village of Cary for Monday, June 4th, 2018 to order with roll call, please.
Cavelli? Here. Betts?
Here.
Koffler?
Here.
Kraus?
Here.
Weinhammer? Here. McAlpine?
Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brian, will you check to see if anybody signed in, please? We'll now move to the open forum where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. Brian is checking for me. I'm sure everybody's here to discuss anything about Meyer, so we'll give everybody an opportunity there. Is there anybody here that wants to address the village board on anything other than the Meyer material? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and close open forum. As people come in, there's more seats up here, up in the front. Please make yourselves at home. The order of business tonight is presentation and public comment for the future park facility amenities and park use ordinance discussion for what is now known as Meyer material. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and he's going to lead us through a brief presentation, and we'll give everybody an opportunity to address the board with comments, concerns, suggestions. We've also, during the course of the meeting, we have our annex room on this side here that we have some displays set up where we're going to give individuals some stickers and things, and they can kind of highlight what they want, what they'd like to see. You could put that on there so we can kind of get an understanding of what people are thinking. So at any time you feel like you wanted to get up there and take a look, that's fine, but we'll give everybody an opportunity. This is going to be kind of like more of an open house as well, where we can feel free to discuss some of these things individually with people. So excited to hear what Eric has got together for us tonight. So, okay, thank you. Eric, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Village Board. So tonight, as the Mayor mentioned, we're going to present some of the highlights of the previous committee discussions on the park use ordinance, which is something that we would want to have in place to open the facility and get people out there as fast as possible, as well as some discussion, open discussion on potential amenities that could be included down the road for the growth and enjoyment of the property. So in summary, the park facility is on a 102-acre site. We do have in place from day one, as part of the requirements from Meyer Materials or Lafarge Aggregates, they are going to be providing us a 60-space parking lot with access from Clawson Road. Along with that, they've constructed a 2.5-mile circular trail around the 77-acre lake. And additional trail spurs will provide some additional access closer, nearer the water, and to some designated fishing areas that are planned with the facility. In addition, the Park District is going to be constructing some path connections that tie into our network of trails from the north. And Courtney Sage, our management analyst, is also going to be co-presenting this evening, and she's going to start with a summary of our park use ordinance.
The goals of the park use ordinance was to make sure that we both had safety covered as well as enjoyment for the new park facility, and we wanted to get something out as soon as possible to give residents access to the facility. So in doing this, we understood that as new amenities were to come about, the ordinance would be able to be restructured, and this ordinance would just be based on the current amenities. When we were creating the ordinance, we did want to structure it similar to other recreational areas. For example, the Cary Park District, we wanted to have similar rules. So you'll see the dates of operation, April 1st through October 31st, and then the hours would be dawn to dusk. No outside grills or bonfires, no smoking, alcohol use, or glass bottles, and then no camping, no dumping or littering, and then no overnight parking. And all of these would just be for safety. And then for trail use, we wanted it to be for both hiking or walking as well as bicycles, but no unauthorized motorized vehicles. Pets would be permitted if kept on leashes, and then no horseback riding.
So it's the intent to open it up initially to this group of users for the trail. It's a wide trail, so we anticipate a nice 15-foot wide path that can be safely shared by a wide variety of people that want to enjoy the trail. Obviously, as we move forward with the residents and the village board, we can decide if that needs to be amended, but this is at least our initial take on what would be a good starting point for the trail system. This is a couple cross sections that kind of show a generalized nature of how the paths relate to the water's edge. So back in 2008, when some of the original ordinances were approved, there was an exhibit that kind of showed how the lake and the trail system would be incorporated should the trail go right up against the water. Based on the grading conditions that are out there and to account for safety, and I think to also better enjoy the views of the water, getting the trail a little bit further from the water in many areas at up higher from the water definitely enhances the views that we have out there. So what you see below is the typical section. So it varies from location to location, but typically shows what the trail looks like relative to the water. You have a 15-foot wide gravel area, which will be bordered on both sides by a strip that's mowed on a weekly basis by our mowing contractor. And then all the other vegetated areas after that will be a taller prairie grass that will range in height from a couple of feet to maybe 3 or 4 feet high. And from there, it slopes gently down before it, and another kind of a safety ledge of a flatter area before it reaches the water surface. And then below the water, there's a safety ledge. It varies in width. For most parts of the lake, it's about 4 to 8 feet wide. In some of the areas where we have future development planned, we require that Meyer Materials and their contractor grade out a bigger shelf, which is more like 10 feet plus, which would be the areas mainly around the northwest shore, where there could be some more programmed areas that we want to get people right up against the water someday.
As Eric mentioned before, the Hoffman Park has the future trail connections. Hoffman Park currently has the dog park, and then a future disc golf course is planned for August of 2018.
And as you can see in the areas that are in kind of a yellow-orange, that is the area that the Park District received money from Meyer to construct. And they've also recently been awarded a State of Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program grant. So they'll be able to connect the trails up far north, up by the dog park, and the ponds that are up at the north end of Hoffman Park, all the way to the existing trail in 31, as well as the network that currently exists in Hoffman Park, just north of Fox Trails subdivision.
Lake use regulations, these would just be current amenities, not including anything for the future, but we had put in no swimming or wading, no unauthorized watercraft on the lake, and then for fishing regulations, it would be in designated areas with catch and release, and you would need a valid fishing license, and there would be no ice fishing. You can see on the map where some tentative fishing locations would be. These would be based on the as-built survey and bathymetrics once those were received.
And the bathymetrics are the basically the underwater survey that will show us the exact depths and the terrain that is existing beneath the water surface. So that'll also help us better identify places where it's easier to place a floating or rolling pier, or places where just naturally fish will be more likely to congregate and enhance the fishing experience.
This is an example of the fishing access where you can see we could have those rolling piers to provide an extra area to fish.
This particular sketch is the southern peninsula that will be part of the trail system and the access that we'll have from day one.
But again, as we mentioned, these locations are fluid. They're subject to change once we get the final grading, go out there and kind of can observe the existing conditions and look at the bathymetric, which, as Eric said, was the underwater survey that'll be done.
In this particular location at the southern peninsula, it's probably the most likely candidate for areas with a more gradual slope from the path down to the water, and also an area where the water will stay shallower longer, just based on what we've heard from the contractor and where the excess material from the mining ended up being placed. So this particular spot is about 2/3 of a mile walk from the parking lot along Clausen. Another aspect of the park use ordinance would be landscape regulations. And these pretty much mirror what the Park District has on their park use ordinance that applies to all their facilities. The main aspects of the regulations for landscaping are that users of the parks cannot cut, remove, or pretty much damage any of the dirt, trees, plants, shrubs, and so forth. In addition, they have regulations against burning any of the vegetation on site as well. Now, given that overarching ordinance, which is recommended to not allow people to alter or damage the landscaping and the vegetation, there is an optional provision that we discussed at the committee last time with regards to where existing homes back up to our park property. So if it's desired by the board and we have that direction to facilitate the ability for property owners to clear out some of the brush and undesirable vegetation behind their homes on the village's property, one way we could facilitate that would be through a permit process. So basically, we would have homeowners that are interested in enhancing the view from their property down to the lake. We would allow them to have the consideration of clearing out some of that brush and shrubs and the poor vegetation by permit. We would review the property before they can start the work and tag and mark any desirable tree species or plant species that we wouldn't want eliminated, particularly if there's high quality oaks or other trees that are of value that should actually obviously become an asset to the property owner and part of their view, but should also remain. The suggested parameters, if we allow that, would be that we limit it to just the area immediately behind that property that is requesting it, given the fact that some neighboring properties may prefer the screening that the vegetation provides and prefer the low covering brush and the shade that crowds out or chokes out a lot of the weeds and other less desirable quick growing plants. And also, the other parameters would be that we would have to make sure that there's no encroachment of the private yards on the village property. So we would definitely want to make sure that the limits are identified clearly so that when the resident or a contractor, if they desire, does the work, that we have some defined parameters of where that work can take place. This is just an example of what the code language would look like if this option is entertained.
And this is coming from a resident request here. We wanted to bring it to the village board to see if you had any feedback on this. We think there is the ability to accommodate this in certain situations. It is pretty unique to have residents going on village property to remove certain vegetation, but we could accommodate this if the village board is interested in it.
One item to note is that it'll vary, obviously, how much brush would need to be removed property to property, but part of the permit process would require that the resident or the contractor either have that brush removed and taken off site, just like any other property owner would if they had trees cleared in their backyard, or if they desire, the contractor or the resident could do the clearing and trimming and then bring it to the curb, and then they can pay for a special pickup, in which we can bring our chipper and our brush collection truck and dispose of the material right there from the curb. We'd hope to be able to provide that at the rear of the property. However, given the weight and the size of the vehicles that would need to take the chipper back there, the chipper itself is about 10,000 pounds. And the truck, the only trucks that we have that can tow that equipment are about 17,000 pounds in weight, empty. And that's bigger than what I would recommend that we drive on our gravel trails and in that vegetated maintenance corridor in the back. So that would be the reason that if we consider this, either contractors remove the brush as part of their work and the work that they're doing for the homeowner, or as I mentioned, it could be brought to the curb and then the village staff, as part of the permit fees, can take care of it.
We don't have to decide it now, but is there any initial feedback on this from the village board?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. So in summary, as far as the park use ordinance, as we mentioned, we're trying to mirror the existing regulations of the neighboring park properties, so there's not a confusion on the part of the park users when they cross from one facility to the next with regards to opening hours and other regulations. Our suggested hours and dates of operation: dawn to dusk, April 1st through October 31st. And as Courtney mentioned, we're suggesting no bonfires or portable grills. We will be installing permanently attached grills on site so that in the picnic areas there is the ability to grill. It's just that we ask that they use those as opposed to outside tools. No smoking, no alcohol use, camping, hunting, and no overnight parking. Trail use, as we mentioned, no motorized vehicles, but pets on leashes and bicycles are definitely modes of transportation we would encourage on those trails. Lake use, at this time, at least for the initial onset with what we will have in our possession from day one, we're suggesting no swimming and no outside watercraft. But as we go later in this presentation, we'll talk about future amenities and future options, in which time some of those ideas to get access on the water, in the water, will be discussed and could be potentially implemented. It would just be a simple amendment to our park use ordinance if we add those new amenities. And fishing regulations, for the safety of the users, and I think for the benefit of the fishermen, we're trying to place these designated areas in the best places possible. We are recommending that fishing be allowed only from the designated areas, and that for the health of the lake and the enjoyment of all users, that it's catch and release and no live bait. And as we just discussed, the optional vegetation clearing provisions, which it sounds like is something the board is interested in providing. All right, before we move on to the proposed and future amenities, any other feedback or comments on the park use ordinance? Okay. As I
One point to make
mentioned-
just really quick is that besides the picnic areas, there has been discussion to have benches found all around the trail as well. So,
Oh, yes, that's a good segue. As far as our proposed amenities, from day one with the current facilities condition, as Courtney mentioned, we're recommending that we open it up for designated fishing access, the picnic areas with picnic tables, benches. We're looking to provide an on-site restroom near the parking lot in the picnic areas, as well as places to dispose of trash and recycling. And then on the perimeter of the trail, from day one, we would definitely have those benches.
Eric, could you go back to that last slide for a minute, please?
Sure.
So we have utilities run out to there. Is that up in the corner, up in the north corner and the eastern side, and then it runs about halfway down?
Yep, about halfway in this leg here, there's a loop of water main and currently unused sanitary force main that runs here, terminates here. So that's mainly for the future development of property along Route 31 to provide utility access.
So when we talk about a toilet facility, are we talking about a porta potty at the parking lot?
So down here, correct, we don't have utilities down there, but we're looking at our different options that range from the standard like construction type portable toilet facility. That would be the very minimum base level on up to there's other more substantial restrooms that actually have solar power, use gray water for harvest from the rains and rain barrels, and they actually have flushing toilets and sinks, not requiring a full water and sewer connection. Those are costly, obviously, to something kind of in the middle, which is probably what we would recommend. It would be a vault restroom, which is similar to the facilities you would see in several of the Cary Park District parks, McHenry Conservation District facilities. Those are simply it's a solid structure. It has some venting that goes down to a larger tank that the toilets would flush into, and then we just periodically have them pumped out.
So would that be similar to what's out by the library at Cary Grove Park?
That particular one I'm not familiar with, but I think it would be similar to the one in, I think the Hollows has some.
Okay.
So they're real structures, they're actually precast structures. They look like regular standard buildings.
Yeah. Well, the one out there by the library looks like a real toilet, like a regular
Yep.
rest stop.
Yep,
That's what we'd be
And then
recommending.
it has a holding tank down below.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I think we would need something like that.
yeah.
Yep, real walls, real toilet fixture, but no sinks, no running water, just has the standard hand sanitizer type of
Okay.
feature.
Right, no potable water.
Now, back in 2016, the village had a schematic design concept prepared by one of our consultants, Hitchcock Design Group. This was intended as part of our development of the mass grading plan that Meyer Materials contractor would ultimately be finishing the restoration project to. So the intent was to make sure that they left the grading plan in a manner that should we want to develop more substantial facilities down the road, that the grades that are left wouldn't be left where they would require us a very substantial cost just to get the project started. So what they showed was the types of facilities, not that were tied to this layout, these ideas, these amenities, but at least it showed a clustering of different programmed amenities that, when laid out, would require minimal work with the grades that Meyer Materials left us. So as you can see, the southeast corner, that's where the initial parking lot is currently located. Same location, obviously slightly different configuration, but that area itself could be one spot for some minor amenities and additional features that could be added. The schematic design, I said we'll start in the south. Obviously showed a additional playground, park facility near that area, the picnic areas. They showed some additional stone fishing stations, and off the concept there showed an island. We ended up working with Meyer Materials to make that a peninsula so that the access to it is immediate, doesn't require an expensive bridge, and is easier to maintain, but still provides that closer access to the water and being surrounded by the water on three sides. But those two areas obviously were graded to allow for future development of some kind of activity there. On the north end, there's a bigger area left open. So the concept plans show that that could be a spot for future areas like a beach area, an amphitheater, a larger parking facility, some other, maybe a more primary, larger picnic area. So it's definitely sloped and graded to accommodate a much bigger facility down the road. One feature that has to be considered, though, for that area is that access. It's kind of landlocked at this point. So when the property to the west develops in the future, we want to make sure that we secure a easement so that an access road can be created from Route 31 through that property and probably in harmony with that property, however it develops, to get over to this new park facility.
Do we have the bathymetric survey done of the lake?
It's one of the things that, now that we're in June, that will be provided to us by the contractor from Meyer Materials. So It's coming shortly.
So they have proposed a swimming beach up here in the corner. Is the lake being graded to accommodate that in the future?
The area near the lake is graded for that. So actually, based on...
What about underwater, though?
Not underwater, no. So the area here is actually where it was... this area was harder to grade because of the existing elevation that had to be held at the north property line. It didn't leave much room for the beach in the spot where the concept showed it. So the contractor actually left it south in this cove on the north end of it. So the slopes are more gradual for the beach and park facility. That being said, though, the grading is minimized at the surface to accommodate a future more developed facility.
Why isn't the underwater being graded by Meyer? That was my question last time at the meeting when I asked if the dredging was done, if they were done with working on the lake, because I thought we were going to get a bottom that would meet our requirements that we would want in the future.
It gets us closer, but to do that requires a lot of filling back of the lake, and mainly because of the fact that any public swimming beach is regulated by the state of Illinois. So in order to have a beach, we would have to be a licensed operation for that type of facility, and they have very specific rules with regards to the slopes of the beach, the underwater grades of the beach waters. They have requirements for having a secure perimeter, that you have to have lifeguards on staff. You have to have a full restroom changing facility with telephone access and utilities. So a lot of very specific things. Getting that very shallow grade out into the water would have been very, very difficult at this stage through the mining process. Much in the same way when Crystal Lake's Three Oaks Recreation Area was constructed. The mining company there did not establish the underwater grades for the beach, just given the fact that they don't know exactly what parameters, what width of the beach, the siting of the actual building facility is going to be until you do the full detailed design. and at which time then you're able to place and decide where that fill has to go, assuming you're going to take the approach to fill the lake to accommodate those grades. The other option is to excavate outward and increase the water body where the beach is going to be and grade that shallow water into the land. Like say, if it was here, if this is the current shoreline, you could grade out a little further to make that shallow area meet those grades. So to do it ahead of time, not knowing where we're going to site it, how we're going to site it, could have boxed us in and made a more expensive project down the road, not knowing the details. But that is something the site can accommodate in the future should the village want to proceed down that road. As I mentioned, with the state of Illinois' regulations for public swim beaches, it's not as simple as just grading out the beach area and opening the doors, letting people swim. There's a lot of very specific things by law that we would have to implement first before we could even open that.
Well, and a lot of those are on the plan right now. You can see that access drive, the parking lot, as Eric mentioned, the restrooms, the bathhouse, the build out of the beach, utilities. So you got to connect, you have to have that utility connection, have to do the final grading. So there are real costs, very real significant costs related to building this out for all the amenities to have the beach there.
But you bring up a very good point, Trustee Kraus, that getting as much as we can in place to start so that we can help accomplish that goal, if it's something that we determine we want to do, is the right idea. It's just that in my experience with site development and constructing different facilities, sometimes to paint ourselves in a corner is not the best idea from a planning perspective or a cost perspective. So I think what we have here is a well-graded above-ground site in a location situated that is least likely to be impacted by the prevailing winds and erosion from the waters themselves. We've got a good spot picked out if the beach is something that we move forward on.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, I don't want to debate the grading issue tonight. You know, this is a forum, hopefully, for everybody to express what they want to see here for this facility. I guess as it relates to the swimming beach, because that's been something that most people are saying they want. In fact, everybody that has responded to me said they want a swimming beach. Mm-hmm. Are there any other options which may not require the other parking lot and access road? Could we move the a swimming beach maybe on the east side of the lake, closer to the parking lot that is now planned? You know, and do some grading to allow a swimming facility, basic changing area, things like that, which wouldn't be so expensive and would allow people to utilize it for swimming.
Unfortunately, the terrain that's out there, because the grades kind of rise as you go this way, even before the mining was done. This part here, so the tie-in point where meeting the existing rear property lines of the Fox Trail subdivision, is much higher than the normal water level on the southeast side in particular, than the differences from, say, here down to here. So that makes getting a flat enough area to actually get a decent spot for a parking lot or the beach facility itself pretty challenging. And then secondly, positioning it on this side of the water with the prevailing west to east winds that typically occur, the beach would be battered by a lot of wave action and erosion. So it'd be very challenging to maintain the beach itself on this particular shore here.
So is there a requirement for a maximum distance from the parking lot to a swimming beach in the regulation? Is that part of the state regulations?
I don't know if it's an exact distance, but it needs to be part of the enclosure. Actually, I would have to look at that if there's a distance of the parking lot. I know there's a distance of the telephones and the changing facility and the restroom facility from the beach, because it does need to be contained and secured. But the parking lot, obviously, that's more driven by, I think, a practical distance of how far someone's willing to park their car and carry their blankets, umbrellas, and just having a 6-year-old and 11-year-old myself carrying all their toys and stuff more than a certain distance is probably going to be challenging, so it would be more limited to that. And then the beach loading itself, you have to have enough parking to accommodate the users that are anticipated. This is the 60 parking space lot at the southeast corner of the facility. I'd anticipate, based on the response you're hearing, and I think what I presume the residents would want as far as being able to get out and enjoy this lake and this facility, I think a much larger parking lot is probably in order for any beach that we would construct. Because I agree with you, I think demand would be out there.
We can certainly continue to explore options. I mean, once we get the bathymetric, we can look at that and analyze that with our engineers. I think just what we're seeing right now is that it would be challenging to locate a beach in some of these other spots, but that doesn't mean that we can't explore this and have conversations, continue to talk about it, so.
So yes, I think we had hoped to position it in a easier place to implement sooner, but just based on the conditions and the experience of our consultants who has experience designing these types of facilities in other locations, that northwest corner is really the ideal place with regards to a sustainable and easy to maintain beach facility, should we want one. I think some of Trustee Krause's comments kind of beat me to the punch here. As we mentioned with the north side amenities, some of the things you need to accommodate those are access to Route 31 via that adjacent property, just some additional final grading depending on the exact configuration of what we want to plan there, and then extension of the utility services. So given the fact that water and sewer exist along the east and north property line, this is also the spot where having the beach facility there with requiring full restrooms and showers and so forth, we're close to the water and sewer services. Whereas down here, there would be a little more challenging extension required to get it from along Carroll-Gonkin Road and then over to the west toward that part of the property. South side amenities, as far as implementing those, the southeast side is pretty well established. It's just expanding the amenities that the board and the residents desire there. And then for this section here in the south, it would require a new access road and a new parking facility at the south end in order to accommodate those. This area is even further from utilities, which makes it a little more challenging for some of the more elaborate types of amenities, like the kinds of things that could be sited up north. But there's definitely the ability to get an access road there as part of the approvals and agreements with Meyer Materials. They do have to provide us a future access easement there. And then the grades, obviously, this is where the Hall Road used to exist. So the grades do facilitate themselves to get down there gradually and then grade out a parking facility and whatever else wants to be developed there. And then finally the fun part. So we are looking for feedback from the village board and from the residents on the types of amenities that the village of Cary wants to see there someday. From our initial research of comparable facilities in the area around the country, there's probably 3 different categories of things that we could do down the road. You have your basic park amenities, and these are just meant to spur the discussion, just things that we've seen out there that could fit in our property if we wanted them. Basic park amenities have a lower cost threshold, so they're easy to implement, but they're more basic in nature, but still give people an opportunity to enjoy the park and the views and the facility. So things like enhanced, wider picnic areas, more sports and gaming activities like beach volleyball, bocce ball, horseshoes. There's a lot of other, I think, games and sports that require a little bit more of a facility to play, and those are things that could be accommodated in the park around our parking areas or around the trail system. Community gardens are some things that some of their park districts and facilities have included in their properties, just give people an opportunity to be out there on the site and plant a vegetable garden if they don't have the ability to do so at home. Educational trail signage, we've seen some examples of just some good things for children to learn more about nature and science and other elements that can be incorporated into the actual park itself, whether it's on the trail or on signage and interpretive learning stations along the trail. There's opportunities for things like that. And while you're walking along the trail getting exercise, there's opportunities for exercise stations. There's some widely marketed equipment for more than just running and biking. There's little exercise stations and equipment where you can do push-ups, curls, and other more interactive exercise opportunities right along the trail itself. Intermediate park amenities could be more elaborate things with structures involved, like concession stand buildings, maybe similar to what the high school district has near the football field. They don't necessarily require water and sewer, but they have electricity and storage areas for vendors to potentially set up shop. An event area could be set up somewhere on the site with a network of sidewalks, perhaps, as one concept, almost like a college campus quad, where you can have a perimeter of paved areas for farmers markets, food trucks, or just festivals in general. Inclusive playground equipment, so the standard playgrounds are kind of all over the place, not just in Cary, but there could be an opportunity to do something a little bit unique, playground equipment that's more catered to and accessible to all different levels of children. Canoe kayak launch. If the desire is to change some of the initial regulations of not allowing watercraft on the lake itself, a launch for non-motorized craft, canoes, kayaks, paddleboards, a launch could be constructed somewhere on the site to let people bring in those types of boats and enjoy the surface of the water.
Eric, can you go back to one of the previous slides? Because I had a few residents before the meeting ask me about the canoe kayak launch, and just show where, if we decide to do that here in the near term or future, where those potentially could be cited based on the information that we have right now.
Sure. Just based on some of the research we've done as far as guidelines to implement boat launches, in particular non-motorized boat launches, actually, Courtney did a lot of the legwork, and she found a lot of good examples of how different park facilities construct those. There's different manners you can do it in. It could be a natural water landing, which is basically sand or a rounded gravel pebble beach type of launch. So that way you can basically push your kayak or canoe on the gravel surface without damaging your boat, and vice versa. When you're coming back in, you can paddle toward the shore, and then at the end of your ride, go right up onto the beach. It's probably the most easy to implement option, but it does require that you have an area with grades that are gently sloped approaching the water, and you probably have a little bit of a shallower area, at least immediately near the shore, to accommodate that, so that people aren't quite ready to paddle away and they need to step out of their boat for a bit. There's still you can still stand and get into your boat and out of your boat. Other options are concrete mats, or they have different prefab slabs, precast slabs you can place down. Obviously, they're more durable, but they cost more. But they can also limit maybe the ability to easily paddle up and off of it, because those could damage the bottoms of your boats a little bit more easily. Benefit there, though, is that if the fire department needed to have access to the lake for emergency rescues, that's one of the factors that has to be considered if and when we do allow water access. If we're going to allow people to paddle on the lake, we got to make sure that the fire department can get out there as well to help them if they need it. So they would need to be consulted to make sure that we provide them with access for whatever they need to do those water rescues. So they would likely need some way to get their emergency watercraft there easily.
So do we have potential sites identified?
We do. So obviously southeast corner is where our current parking lot facility is. About 2/3 of a mile is the Southern Peninsula. So as you can see here, it is one of the areas that is where the trail is not right up against the water, but it's not significantly higher than the water. So the grades are more gradual. There definitely could be an opportunity, between some of our fishing areas or over in the corner here, to have an easy to grade location for one of those naturalized water launch or boat launch areas. Also, the other benefit is that based on the contractor's understanding of the subsurface conditions, they've said that the east side of the Southern Peninsula is the area with probably the shallowest waters. They thought it was probably between 4 to 5 feet deep for good distance beyond that peninsula there. So from our experience, I think that shallow water next to the deep water, one, makes it a great place for fishing, because it gives a little varied subwater terrain for the fish to want to congregate and not necessarily hang out just in the deep areas. Gives them more cover. But secondly, it gives us a better place to let people get in and out of their kayaks and canoes without stepping out into 20-foot deep water for a greater distance. So that would be one potential area, and the other area would be up along here where it's already been pre-graded for a future beach. You have very gradual slopes from the path down to the water's edge, and we have a bigger underwater shelf that's pre-graded there, so you have more room for, again, people to stand next to their boats and hop in. Drawback to this area up here, obviously, is that it's the furthest from our existing parking lot. This area here would likely require some kind of parking and access road to be constructed first. Down here, it's walkable, but it is 2/3 of a mile, so it'd be pushing it, in my opinion, to want to carry a larger canoe or a larger two-person kayak that far. The future access road, once it's constructed, if we go down that path, and parking lot would obviously help make this area definitely way more attractive for a canoe and kayak launch. Another option, especially down here, public-private partnerships. The city of Crystal Lake currently rents out a section of their lakeshore for paddleboard and kayak. I believe it's actually paddleboard rentals.
Yeah.
But so there are companies out there that may be willing to work out an agreement with the village and set up shop where there's actually boats available for rent out there. And then you wouldn't have to carry your equipment. You just have to, at least in the initial condition, make that short walk over to this corner of the lake and possibly have ability to have boats for use there.
Could you go back to the slide that shows the road going down? What are we going to be left with when Meyer leaves? Will there be the outline of a road? Will there be nothing, and then we have to do the road ourselves?
We would have to construct the road ourselves. It's basically being restored to prairie, just like the rest of the terrain. But the slopes are there.
I mean, there's basically a road there right now. Why can't they leave what's there?
Mainly because we would have access going down to nowhere. So definitely,
Safety.
it would encourage, I guess, vehicles and users to travel down to some place that may not be in the best interest from a safety perspective and security perspective. But as I mentioned, the road that's there now isn't a true road either. It's an access trail. So even if they had left that there, the grading and the cost to construct the new access road would be essentially the same.
Okay.
The bigger cost is reestablishing the grade so that the road's not too steep. And since the slope's
Already.
pretty much being maintained there, that hard part's already done. So I mentioned canoe kayak launch. Mountain bike course was something that was shown on the schematic design. You can see here on the east shore, just with the higher elevation from top to bottom, could be an opportunity to construct some off-road biking trails with little mini obstacles as well. Paved trails down the road are also an option. With what we're getting from day one, we have a very wide 15-foot gravel trail, but it's not just a standard limestone screenings trail. It's a compacted, what we call a gradation of CA6. So it's a mixture of coarse aggregate and finer materials that lock together very well. It's the exact same stone base that's used as the base for roads and sidewalks. So should we want to pave in the future, we already have the substantial base down in place, and it's wide enough to accommodate a nice 12-foot wide asphalt trail down the road if we want. So a lot of the hard work is done. The stormwater management features of the trail are already completed. There's ditches and culverts and swales across the entire trail network that Meyer Materials is leaving us with. What they've done is given us a very substantial 7-figure drainage system that will help prevent erosion down the road, which protects and minimizes our work to maintain the gravel trail. But also, more importantly, if we ever to invest in a paved trail, this drainage system protects that as well. I think that's one of the major issues that facilities like this encounter when they have trails, is that the drainage issues. If you don't have the ability to manage that water and that surface runoff, you end up repairing and rebuilding the same places you paved and filled in with gravel over and over again. So this is a very good thing that we have a very good drainage system in place.
With regard to the parking lot and the runoff from the vehicles and things like that, is there something you can install, like a catch basin to change the, the water from any oil on the car or anything like that?
Actually, the way it's designed now already meets the standard and recommended best management practice for water quality protection. And that's to make sure that surface runoff, if it's contaminated with anything from things that run off of a vehicle or from a small oil leak or anything at all, that it doesn't run off the pavement and go right into the water by itself. The stormwater ordinance requires, and this design that we're being left with facilitates the vegetated swales. So all that runoff goes across these grass swales before, and more or less is filtered before it goes through the culverts and out into the lake. So you can see in the picture here, the circular parking lot configuration. The contours show that all the runoff is graded basically to the perimeter. And then on the inside of this loop here is a swale that they've constructed for us. So all the water comes off the pavement, down the hill into the swale, and it travels into the swale here to the low point of the ditch. Then it goes into a culvert and out into the lake. So these long vegetated ditches give a lot of ample opportunity for the solids to settle out into the swale instead of going into the lake. And the same goes for any contaminants. They get filtered by the ground as opposed to right to the water.
For the parking lot, are we paying for that out of the restoration fund monies that we had? Or is Meyer paying for this?
They supply, the parking lot you see here is supplied by Meyer Materials and built before we take ownership.
Okay.
They're talking about, this will be one of the final phases once they finish the northern half, because they have the six-wheelers and heavy trucks that are going to be going back and forth. They want to do this last so that we'll get a pristine parking lot and roadway. Because there's an asphalt roadway from the parking lot to Clemson Road.
Are there any restrictions in terms of allowing non-motorized watercraft on the lake if there isn't access for the fire department to get down to it?
Yes, the way at least our initial ordinance would be crafted for day one operations, we're saying no watercraft until we obviously provide some kind of kayak or canoe launch or something like that. But for emergency response, that would obviously be waived. The fire department, if they desire, we would work with them to provide some way to get their response equipment down there.
We still need to coordinate with the Fire Protection District on that if that's a desire here. I expect at some point we'll have that and that'll be built out, whether it's, when it's open day one or in the future here, and that's going to be part of us coordinating with the Fire Protection District.
Like when you look at similar facilities around the area, the Hollows from the Conservation District, they have lakes and ponds up there. The fire district obviously doesn't station a boat there, to my knowledge, all the time, but they just utilize the existing launches out there, which are accessible from the parking lot to get their response teams out there. City of Crystal Lake, they don't allow outside watercraft. They have rental boats and kayaks, paddleboards, and so forth, but they maintain a motorized boat that is used by the facility operations for patrolling, but also for emergency uses by the fire department. So they have no motorized boats allowed, obviously, except for the emergency response.
That's kind of where I was thinking in terms of that other access point, even if it was just a roughed-in gravel road or something, and then had a chain across the top up on Clausen Road, that would give the fire department access then down to where we're thinking about possibly allowing the kayak launches and that. I think it might be smart to get that put in then before they finish up.
Yeah, I'm not really clear. Eric, are you saying that we can't have any watercraft in there because the fire department does not have a way to launch a boat?
I'm suggesting that from day one, from the initial operation, that we don't allow watercraft until we facilitate ways for people to get those boats on the water, I guess conveniently and safely. And then two, so until the fire department weighs in on how they want to respond to potential calls when there's regular use on the water. So we're not saying that we don't want to have people on the water. We just want to make sure that when we do, we're ready for it. So our suggestion, should it be day one when we open this summer? Probably not. Could it be day one when we open next summer if a few things are coordinated? Potentially, depending on obviously what we implement and what's needed. There's a lot of creative ways I think we can work to get, I think, some initial access out there. But it's one of those things I think we should grow into, and we should not rush into, so we don't do it so we do it correctly. But I think it's a good idea that we facilitate that, but we just make sure we do it thoughtfully.
We still haven't,
cost effectively.
to answer your question, we still haven't communicated that with the Fire Protection District.
Well, and that's sort of my
boat
point.
access.
I don't see them, you're telling me they probably have an inflatable for firemen that could carry that to the lake. I guess I'm not accepting this as an excuse for not having watercraft. You know, there's a multitude of areas within this county where you can put a canoe or kayak in where there's no launch for an emergency vehicle. And I'm not aware of any issues with that. So, you know, my thoughts are I'd like to get the most out of this facility as we can and allow people to use it with paddle boards and canoes and kayaks. And I'm not accepting of the excuse that the fire department isn't able to get a boat in there. I know they can, and I wish we had somebody to respond to that.
We're not saying that's holding us up here at this point, though. You know, as Eric had mentioned earlier, it's important for us to understand where they're going to go, the boat launch, where that's going to be, and make sure that it's constructed properly. That's goal number one.
Yeah, we're not saying it's the reason not to do it. We're just saying that's just one factor we should just be aware of. It's not the one make or break deal with regards to that. Okay. And then as far as other ideas, there's also obviously high-end amenities that could be considered down the road. These are typically the things that will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. And some of these may be potentially benefited from a public-private partnership. There's different ways out there to get private entities to maybe lease land and operate things on an agreement basis, construct some of the access or other amenities ahead of time for us. And we don't have to go through all these, but we just have some example photos of some of those different amenities we talked about. If there's any in particular that the board or the residents have questions on, things from the basic park amenities like we talked about, up to some of the more elaborate items like the playgrounds, splash pads, boat access, food truck courts, amphitheaters, swim beaches, boardwalks, and rinks, ice rinks, and as we're talking about here, canoe and paddleboard access. And then, and these were some other, actually in the area in Wheaton, there's some adventure courses and challenge courses that have operations where they operate different obstacles on the sites. So with that, I can go back to any of these images, but if you have any specific questions about some of the ideas, we'd love to hear. We've definitely heard about wanting to get boat access and especially non-motorized boat access. So I've heard that as a priority. Are there any other amenities that the village board wants us to put in the list?
I have a question. With regards to the swimming regulations, where can I find those? Is it a statute or is it, where is it with the telephone access, all that stuff?
It is in the Illinois Administrative Code. So it's Title 77, Chapter 1, Subchapter N, Part 820.
We can make copies. We can make copies.
Send you an email about that.
It's this. I can show it to you.
Okay. Yeah, I want to read up on that a little bit more. And then, well, I'm not a fisherman person, but why a catch and release only, and why no live bait?
That I would kind of defer to other fisher persons that are more experts than I am, but the catch and release in particular, I think that's mainly to make sure that the opportunity for enjoying the fishing that's out there can be sustainable. One of the things that we will be faced with moving forward to ensure a really good fishing experience is that we're going to have to stock this lake.
Right.
There are some fish in there. That's just part of normal mining operations because it helps the clarity of the water, which in turn helps their ability to do the mining itself. However, I guess I don't want to compare ourselves to Crystal Lake, but in the case of that facility, on day one when it opened, those lakes had been stocked by a private group, the Crystal Lake Anglers, for decades when the mining stopped from till before the facility opened. So there's a very mature fishing population in there that's been built up, and obviously they from our perspective, we want to do it for the same reason, but our fish population is going to be a little less mature than those other lakes. We want to basically give ourselves a chance to build that up and make the fishing experience match the view that's out there, namely that it's spectacular.
Eric, Attorney Euler can answer the question about bait.
Only because I'm a fisherman. Live bait exposes the watershed to potentially undesirable species that then spawn in the water and take over the water, potentially. So you'd be releasing, you couldn't control what bait was being used, live bait. And if those are released into the water, they'll populate the water potentially with species you don't want.
Okay.
Which would refer to like minnows and things like that. But
carp.
worms,
Not worms, no.
Crayfish.
so worms would be allowed with the live bait restriction?
They would not endanger the watershed, right?
So we could make sure our ordinances are clear about that.
Well, because some fishermen, I've been known to fish a few lakes myself, but some fishermen use smaller fish that they catch as live bait to catch a larger fish, which is illegal.
And how much do we currently have in the restoration fund?
It's about $1.5 million, plus or minus.
Did you have any other comments, Eric? Go to
Only other comments are, as we mentioned at the beginning, we have some display boards in the adjacent room. So afterwards, residents are invited to hang out with staff if they want to ask some one-on-one questions or mark up on the boards their opinions on some suggested amenities that they'd like to see. And we also have some panels up there. We can give you some stickers. So it mirrors the electronic survey that's out on the street right now. So you can vote for your most desirable or least desirable amenities that you'd like to see out there. Mirroring that, we'll give you 5 stickers. You put your 5 favorite items up on the boards there. It'll help us with our voting.
Eric, do you think we'd be able to leave those at Village Hall too? Just if after the meeting, residents wanted to provide comments, anyone that's not here today could come into Village Hall and provide comments. We want to get as much feedback as we can from the residents before we open up, so.
And our survey link will be online, our website, for quite some time. So feel free to check out caryillinois.com. And on the front page in our news flashes, you'll see a link to our survey.
Thank you, Eric. We have an exciting opportunity here in the village of Cary. And a little bit of background on this particular lake. There are some that have been through the entire process, but the newer people that haven't been around as much, the initial intent of this when it was turned over to the village of Cary was to be a passive park. It was going to have walking trails, fishing, picnicking, and that type of thing. So when the original budgets and the Land Conservancy Fund was set up, it wasn't set up to provide all these different types of amenities, which would be great. I'm all for a ton of different amenities. I think it would be awesome. But we also have to live within our means. And this is why it's a great opportunity for everybody to kind of, before we delve into all the different things, whether, a boat launch is needed or different types of things that are needed, we need to find out what people are really thinking, what they think their uses are going to be for. So this is an unbelievable opportunity for us as a village. And anything that we do, it will be in the thought of being sustainable. That's the key factor here, is that we have to be able to afford to pay for this in perpetuity. It's going to be a great thing for generations to come. And I welcome any type of feedback that you have, or comments, criticisms, or whatever you want to say, something that's constructive. We have a good opportunity here. So now it's your turn to kind of tell us what you think. And we have another good opportunity in the room next door where you guys can kind of take a look at the map up close and see the different things. I know some of the slides, you couldn't really read what some of the suggested things were by Hitchcock. One of the reasons we employed Hitchcock was because that's the firm the Park District uses. And so it kind of goes in tune to what the Park District's typical scope of work is and what the rest of their parks are like as well. So without that, I'll go through the list of people that have here, and then if anybody wants to jump in. Oh my gosh, yeah. I apologize. You did such a stellar job there, Eric. I apologize. I'm going to turn it over to Brian Simmons, our Community Development Director. I apologize, Brian.
Oh, not a problem. I'll be brief, and then we have Brandon Nolan here from CMAP as well. He's going to give some additional information on the project that we have just starting that's kind of related to the discussion this evening. Last year, the Village of Perry and Village of Algonquin submitted a joint application for local technical assistance through CMAP. It's a grant program that spearheads or helps fund planning initiatives. And late last year, our community was awarded, or both of our communities were awarded one of those grants to focus on planning a study for the Route 31 corridor area. The exhibit that's shown on the slide kind of shows the outline for the planning area. It extends pretty much to the northern border of Hoffman Park to the Cambria subdivision, down 31 to the west end. There's a couple of mining sites that are in the Village of Algonquin, down to the Village of Algonquin Village Hall, and then back all the way up the Fox River is the eastern border of the study area. We just recently signed agreements, local intergovernmental agreements to initiate this study. And last week held the kickoff meeting with our steering committee that was focused on kind of guiding the project forward from this perspective. So Brandon Nolan's a member with planner with CMAP, Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. He's going to be the project lead from that agency on the project, and I'll invite him forward to kind of give some additional background or oversight as far as how the project will work. But one of the key areas that we're focusing on in the Route 31 corridor in the study is these mining sites, and when they do come offline from a mining perspective, what the future land uses, or not just of those properties are, but surrounding properties can be that can take advantage of those amenities that would be finished, park areas, if you will, as far as how the long-term vision of that corridor could be moving forward. So with that, I'll turn over to Brandon for a brief overview of additional information on the project.
Thanks. Good to be here. This is my one slide, so I'll be quick. As Brian said, I'm senior planner with CMAP. We just started this process, but really we're looking at the next year to year and a half of coordinating between Cary and Algonquin on establishing a vision for this study area. Our focus are those quarry sites. So you've got west of 31. We've got the property south of Clawson and east of 31, and then also obviously the Meyer material site we're talking about tonight as being kind of the sub-area 1 in orange. But really the plan is meant to not just establish a vision for those areas, and you're already talking about part of that tonight, but looking at long-term, what's the vision for that collective kind of study area? So how do those sites relate to the unincorporated and incorporated portions of the villages that abut those? Like looking at trail connections to Hoffman Park, for example, is something we're talking about tonight. But what does it mean for trail connections elsewhere into the region? How do we accommodate for, county plans looking at extending a new bridge across the river? Is there ways of connecting to other projects like Virginia Road, for example? How do we tie these sites together, and what's the long-term kind of collective vision? It's a unique opportunity in that it's really, these sites don't come around that often. You've got kind of a blank slate to plan for in these key areas, but also when that does happen, when investment does come to those areas, we need to make sure it's done in a way that doesn't negatively impact existing residents and that benefits the adjacent downtown areas. Really, that's our plan, is looking at long-term vision for these areas. So obviously you're talking about kind of near-term opportunities now, and this project is kind of complementary to what you're talking about tonight, in that we're looking at kind of the long-term tie-ins, especially with the area. To be honest, our main focus will likely be in the area in green, that sub-area 2, because that's kind of the mid to long-term opportunity where you'd have a site coming offline, and it's an opportunity for both villages to kind of coordinate together. Again, we're about looking at probably next July to August is wrapping this thing up. We're just getting started. The steering committee gave some great feedback last week. We're looking to hopefully schedule a community workshop to talk about this area within the next 6 to 8 weeks. Along with those, we'll be doing some key person interviews and stakeholder and kind of focus groups as well, to really try to engage the community about these areas. But happy to answer any questions, but that's kind of the project in a nutshell.
Any questions?
And the project website will be, it's not up yet, but it's CMAP Algonquin Cary. If you just Google that, you'll get it right away. It'll autocorrect to camp. It's CMAP, but that should get you information, and I can be happy to share that with the board once it's available.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
Brian, anything else? Okay. I'll go to the list, and then after I go through the list, I'll open it up to anybody else that has any comments, okay? Chris Winkleman?
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to give a couple, I guess, my 2 cents about this project. The one thing that I think that we're not looking at, and maybe that's because it's a passive development, like a park development, is the use of the lake. I think that's what the residents want. We want swimming, we want boating. We don't have those in the community. We have a small pool. We have to go sometimes to Huntley if we want to use a big pool with big amenities. My family probably goes to the Three Oaks Rec Center 5 to 10 times a year, spending hundreds of dollars there. I realize there's limited resources for this project, but I think we should try and change our viewpoint slightly that this is a recreation lake, that we should take advantage of the lake for what it is and not just the surrounding property. Now, whether or not that's through a referendum or if we use the east side of the lake to put instead of a path, to actually use a road to go around to that northwest side where the beach could be. Maybe it's another community that we reach out to, an outside vendor who would help us develop the property. I just think if we lock into this, it's going to be difficult to come back with boating, especially the swimming. I mean, it's a bedroom community with kids. Everyone would use that. Everybody goes to Crystal Lake. It just would be nice to have that here. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Jim Thomas?
Good evening. Thanks a lot for having a special meeting because it means a lot to the people that live here, pay our taxes, and so on. I got a couple things on the list, and since your list wasn't huge, it kind of grew a little bit. But who's going to be responsible for picking up the garbage? The
That
Park
would be
District?
our Public Works Department.
Public
The Park
Works?
District at this point in time has absolutely no jurisdiction over this piece of property. It would be all village maintained. That would be under Eric's wing now.
Okay. Interesting to hear the couple theories on the toilets. That's great because I've been in construction for 40 years and I'd rather not go to another one of those things. Maybe a little upgrade would be good. What about, there's people that have been swimming there. I've been living on the border there for 28 years. And when they first started digging the water on the far south, people would go there to swim, party, doing against the rules, whatever it is. Well, let's say that I don't know of any cases where they had to pull anybody out of that particular lake. But, I live there and I kind of keep an eye on things. And what would be really great would be those life rings attached to something, like break in case of emergency and save somebody's life, because a lot of people don't realize that's 40 feet deep water. They think, well, I'm going to be swimming for a while, I got a buzz on or whatever the case may be, and then they're in trouble. And I'm not going to jump in and save them, but if I had a life ring nearby, I'd run like hell to get that life ring and give them a chance, 4 life rings, and maybe a day the fire department could come out and give a demonstration on how to use it, and some people would come, other people could care less, I know. That's one thing. Or the third thing, large picnic. If you were going to have a large picnic, you can get one of these McHenry conservation districts like the Hollows or the one up there where the Riverbend restaurant used to be. I don't know the name of that one. And you can get the pavilion for your family reunion or graduation party or something like that. So is there going to be something implemented in that? Because it's such a grand view of the lake. It's a great picnic place.
But these are great ideas.
Okay, I got a lot of them. All of these rules, and I understand rules. I'm a big rule guy. They're going to be to protect the people, and I understand that. But there's a couple of them that are in conflict with use of the area. Who's going to be enforcing the rules?
Cary Police Department.
Are we getting additional officers, or that's just taxed onto what they already do?
It'll just bump out their beats. If the chief were here, he would say we would just assign an officer that would be part of his regular patrol.
Okay, good. I did notice tonight there was a proposal of a possible fee to the village to clear the property line so you have a better view of the new lake. I did that when I moved in, so mine's a pretty good view. But the neighbor to the right never touched one twig. The neighbor to the left did some, and that's how it goes all along the property border. Some people wanted it nice and neat. It eliminates the weeds and the critters and things like that. And people sneaking onto your property because you can actually see them. So I thought that $150 fee is a little excessive. If they're going to make an improvement to the village property, they should be giving them a break instead of a, that's kind of a high fee to me.
Well, that's still to be determined, but the fact that, because we have to have personnel go out there, check out because it's public property. Mine, it's everybody's property. So we have to make sure that they're, like it was presented before, that they're not taking out anything that's valuable, like better trees or bushes, and that's up with the scrub stuff. Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. But we have to employ our staff to go out there, tag it all, go through it, and then go back and make sure that nothing else was taken up. So it's not just a one-stop thing. They'd have to go up and follow up to make sure that it was done to our specifications. It's a way to monitor things.
And that includes for the chipping too. So if someone would bring it to the front of their property, then that covers the chipping costs for us to go out there and do that. So
Yeah, with that included, it's not so bad. One of the rules in conflict is the season. You're cutting off the opportunity to cross-country ski, and there's kids that sled there already. They've been sledding when it was a 30-foot berm, luckily in the right direction. Because it would be disastrous if you go.
So you're looking to extend the hours up, or the months of operation?
Yeah, because there's people do good things in the winter for their health. Taking a walk, go cross country skiing, things like that. And the fishing, stocked fishing. I know there's few species of fish in there already. And I think the Illinois Department of Conservation has programs for new lakes, They may have like a half off if you're going to get a second year or something. I'm sure they have these great programs because fishing, believe it or not, kind of lost its momentum with the handheld devices. So they're trying to get people fishing again. And on the same line, you say there's no boats. What if somebody had a remote-controlled sailboat or a remote-controlled battery-powered boat? That's a great opportunity. 77 acres of wide-open water. I think it'd be cool. And will there be any signage on drone usage? Because these people with drones, I like seeing the films, but I don't know how to fly a drone. But I think it would be pretty cool to fly a drone on a big open spot like that. Okay, now down to the serious stuff. How are you going to come up with a name? How are you going to come up with a name for this lake?
We've kind of throwing some things back and forth, but we'll let you know when we decide on a process to get that done.
we have a survey out right now, Eric, if you want to add on to that here.
Thank you for reminding me. I forgot that. Yes, naming the lake. That's part of the survey that's online. There's a question on there with just a couple ideas to get the wheels turning, but also an opportunity to fill out your own suggestion. So we're looking for the public and the residents to give us their ideas, and we will take some of the best ones from that list, and we'll bring it to the village board for consideration. But we're looking for your help to name it.
It was on.
Can I ask?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Thomas. You had brought up the depth of the water, Eric. So what is the depth of the water? It's not 40 feet, is it?
It varies all over the place, but I would say the deepest sections of the lake are 20 to 25 feet deep. That kind of matches what we heard from the mining company is the length of their drag lines, what they mined most of the areas at. And obviously some areas are a little bit shallower, but in some areas might be slightly deeper, but that 20 to 25 foot range is probably most of it. We'll confirm that when we get the bathymetric survey, though.
Jim, when we went on the tour, is that what they told us? Was that deep? Do you recall? I thought he said it
I
was
don't recall him giving
like
us a definite
15
answer.
feet for some
No, it's up
reason.
to about Friday.
range,
So Friday,
yeah.
it's like about
15
30.
feet?
15 to 25, I'm
Okay.
guessing, but we'll confirm it with the survey. But
Okay.
yeah, but I don't believe that there's probably too many areas that are, or any areas that are in the 40, 50-foot range. Not to say that it's impossible. I know some of the other lakes that are former mines do have some pockets that are that deep, but
Wait, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, in closing, thank you for spending your time governing our village, and I hope it all turns out for the village, and everybody gets a great time using the place. Thank you.
Thank you. This looks like Pat Tundra.
Close enough, but thank you.
I think a lot of people are here tonight because of what we read in the newspaper and social media. I want to thank Eric for giving this presentation. A lot of my questions were answered. Couple things. Mr. Mayor, you said one thing. Are you working with the Park District? You said that this is not a Park District. It's not in their boundary area?
Well, it would, when it comes into the village of Cary, when the majority comes, it'll be within their boundaries, but there's been no official, we've had, conversations with them. At this particular time, they have had no interest in obtaining that piece of property as the McHenry County Conservation District. They are not in the place to acquire any more property now.
MCCD is not, but what about the Park District? Did
Well,
they want
we've had some dialogue with it before. Nothing has been official kind of a thing. What I think the Park District is waiting for, to be perfectly candid, is for that to come into the village of Cary, get all this stuff done, get it disconnected from the village of Algonquin, come into the village of Cary, and then we can have a really good dialogue with them. I'm just, from conversations, I think that's the way it's going to go.
We still need to have conversations with the Park District, but the mayor's right. The Park District, I think, is just waiting until the village takes possession of the property, and then we'll have some more serious discussions with them, absolutely.
Okay, and I noticed one of the slides said 2016, one of the wishes was a kayak canoe launch. I know it's like on phase 2 that you're talking about it. Why not in phase 1 if it was something that was talked about 2 years ago? Then the other one thing I wanted to talk about was she mentioned about the live bait. You were right about the minnows, the bad thing with minnows. But a true fisherman knows that whenever they go to a lake and they're bringing in minnows, they know that they dump the minnows on shore. The muskrats and the raccoons are going to eat them. They're not going to, the fishermen are not going to dump them into the water. They know, the fishermen know that little minnows is part of the carp family. They eat, the food of the other, or the eggs of the other fish. A true fisherman who brought in minnows is going to dump their leftover stuff, on the shoreline. And like this gentleman said, thank you for all the work that you've done doing this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank, from 55 Briargate. I don't want to butcher your last name.
Murata. Hello, thank you. Most of my questions were answered already tonight. I just have one comment that's left. As was already pointed out a little bit, ordinances aren't going to stop anybody from going in there swimming or trying to drag a boat in. I would strongly suggest you do talk to the fire department and find out about how they're going to put a boat in there or anything from a rescue standpoint, because you just can't rely on the fact that, we don't allow swimming at this point. That is going to keep people out of there. Something's going to happen, and from a safety standpoint, that part I think needs to be taken care of.
Thank you. Great point.
Thank you for everything else I say. Most my other questions were all answered. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Joanne Ludstrom.
Hi there. First off, I wanted to say thanks for holding the special meeting and getting the input. There's a couple things I really want to see. I was surprised to see that you're not going to allow paddleboards and kayaks and canoes. That was surprising. I hope that's in the plans in the near future. And I don't think that people really want to be taxed anymore. So, I mean, it might be something to consider that people would be willing to pay a fee for this recreational use. And yeah, I think that was about it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Joanne. Judy Hanks? Judy? We're not that bad, Judy. Come on up here. Okay. Ed Gibbons?
Well, after 27 years, I finally got a lake.
See? Worth the wait.
It was worth the wait, yeah. A couple of my concerns, you've mentioned the motorized vehicles. From 2 o'clock in the morning till sometimes starting at 5 in the morning. They're on there. They're on there. They're on the new gravel trail. We had horses on the gravel trail on Saturday. You mentioned a police officer. Is he going to be there for an hour? Leave for a few hours? I mean, how are you going to monitor that? I just don't want that new trail getting torn up.
Actually, I know if the chief were here, he could probably talk a little bit about a plan. We're trying to figure this all out and how we're going to be able to do this, but it would be our responsibility from a policing aspect to make sure that that's always safe.
Okay.
The length of time that they stay, that I'll leave that up to the experts, but it'll definitely be on our control.
It's going to be similar to other Park District properties. You know, we've got some pretty big open space properties in here.
Right.
Just encourage everyone here to call the police.
Well, I used to
Please
do that,
contact us.
and by the time they got there, they were long gone.
Yeah.
You know, so we gave up on that years ago.
We can't be everywhere, but we
I know.
try to do our best here.
I'm just letting you know that's what's
The
happening.
notification is helpful, and I'll certainly pass that on to the chief.
Well, also too, when it comes to that, once we take all this into the village, you just have to call 911 and we respond to it right away. Just if we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. So I would encourage people to, utilize the 911 service to, because it could be a safety issue too. So we would go out and respond to that call.
Okay, the other thing is kayaks. I bought my wife a kayak for Christmas.
I think overwhelmingly, we're going to try to get the kayaks.
It's
into
150
the
feet to the water. I don't need a boat launch. So as soon as that can be authorized, I'd appreciate it. One other sort of a question. I was walking through Hoffman Park yesterday. Did they give up on the Frisbee golf thing? Because everything is like overgrown again.
I would refer that to the Park District Board. They are better suited to handle that.
Well, if they're going to treat it like they're treating that, you guys keep it. Thank you.
Chris and Dawn? How do you pronounce your last name?
Niziolek.
Okay. I would have been close.
Yeah, no, we're probably the newest residents of Cary in this room. Just been about a month. Came from Crystal Lake, so we really enjoyed the Three Oaks for quite a while and bought our property specifically with this project in mind because it's pretty close to the Hoffman Trail where we are. But anyway, what's really important to us, I think, is the kayaks, like everybody else. Definitely, if there's some sort of rental that could be done. Even if that brings in some sort of revenue to the village, I'm sure, I know we'd be willing to pay. I'm sure there's others that would be willing to pay to not have to haul a kayak or whatever. But the other comparison to obviously Crystal Lake Three Oaks is Duke's on the Water. I know we mentioned those, little snack huts or whatever, but we really enjoy, nice dinners, even though it's not fancy food, being able to have a burger and a drink or whatever on the water. This is something pretty nice. So even if that wasn't funded by tax dollars, if there's corporations or whatever that could pay for that, I think there'd be a lot of people that would enjoy using that. So.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome to Cary.
Thank you.
I think those are things too, as we build out this site and the site evolves, we're going to have to look at those public-private partnerships and see what kind of relationships we can build to help foster some more activities or events out there or dinners, whatever that may be.
And that was recently brought up with the Economic Development Committee. Was there did anyone look into any of the private funding maybe since then?
The private, specifically for this site? Yeah, we haven't gotten to that level of detail yet for this site here, but it's not only that private funding and private opportunities, whether it's, we had mentioned kayaks, but also grants. There will be plenty of grant opportunities, I think, in the future for us to be able to go after, just with this being a new park and open space. So there's some opportunities in the future to help leverage the $1.5 million that we have and make that go further.
I agree. I think that grants is going to be a really big issue once we have ownership of it to get out there, especially because Meyer is, at least when I went on the tour, they're mentioning to us that they're going to be submitting this reclamation for awards, and they believe that they're going to win state awards and probably national awards. Well, if that happens, that's also going to generate some interest and hopefully people investing in it and helping us to continue to develop that.
Bruce Ritter.
Hi. First, I'd like to say for the naming of the lake, we do have a lot of schools in town, and maybe something to do with them. I know it might take a little bit longer now that school's out, but that I know I've got 3 children who would probably love to submit some names themselves. And I do realize a lot of the planning that or thoughts that went into this, or what to do with this property, and how to fund it, took place a long time ago, but it's also much before people really understood what we could do with this and what's possible, especially with opening of the Three Oaks facility. And while my wife loves to take kids there, for us to walk in there as a family with parking, it's like $43, right? It's not so much the money, it's just the annoyance, right? It's so close to it. And then here's one where practically, well, we don't live in the Fox Trails subdivision, just one north of there, but it's practically our own backyard. So we're really thinking about what's really going to increase the quality of our life, but also property values, right? We want people to move to Cary. What does Cary have that's different than other places, especially for families? Because this is a community. If you look at the census data, and I'm not going to bore people with the numbers, the per capita rate of children here is extremely high, much higher than the average in McHenry County, and much higher than the average in Illinois. So. And that's no surprise that if you look at the housing stock here, it's almost all single-family homes. And therefore, families wanting to move in here really impacts property values. And when I think about all the things that we're talking about here that we can do with this, trails, fishing, picnic, community gardens, spray park, playgrounds, farmers market, amphitheater, kind of the list of those simple ones goes on and on. There's really nothing that adds to what Cary already doesn't have. Maybe it extends it, makes it greater and larger, but doesn't really add anything. The 2 things that would really add to the Cary would be the swimming, number 1, and probably 2, boating, in terms of use. And so really got to think about what's kind of the most bang for the buck, right? We might be able to spend a little bit of money on getting an amenity in there, but not a lot of people use it, right? Your kind of cost per user, right, is right, your margin, right, that cost is not very good. And I realize, there is this move to get things in there quickly. And I just like to remind you, there's an old expression, and as an engineer, I've been doing this with a long time, is, between fast, high quality, and cheap, you can't have all 3. You're lucky if you can get 2. And again, for something like this, the people's use of it is going to be very proportional to a large degree to how quality it is. So just to get something in there quick and dirty isn't going to be very good. And with that, since I do realize that a lot of things that people are talking about is an extension, I do want to say, is going back to think about the things here and that are going to improve my family's quality of life, and even improve my home's value. And trust me, I need that home value to increase because we're going through some major renovation projects. We have no plan of moving anytime soon, but still, I know I'm not going to get every dollar back, but I'd like to get at least some dollars back. I realize around here, the word, a lot of people around here, the word tax is actually a 4-letter word. But, you know, for something that's going to increase quality of life and increase property values, I think there's a lot of people here who be willing to pay for it. Now, famous last words, because you got to see exactly what that impact's going to be, right? $10,000 for, you double my taxes, I'm not going to be very happy. A couple $100, maybe we can start having a real conversation. But again, it's really whatever we can do here, spend any money or ask, it's all about the value proposition. So that's all I ask is for you, is remember the value proposition.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Mike from, it's hard to read your last name, from 148 Hampton? You're gonna, okay, great. Debbie Smith? Debbie Smith? Jim Whittenhall?
I don't even know if my name's on there.
Well, I'll get to, I have one more on the list, and then I'll open it up to everybody else.
Okay.
Give me 1 second, okay?
Sure.
No Jim Whittenhall?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, that is? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I misunderstand?
He didn't even know his name was on there.
Oh, you didn't know your name was on the list? Well, get out of here. Come on. Let's hear what you have to say. I'm sorry. Is your wife here?
No, she doesn't like these things. She thinks they're boring.
Oh, gosh.
Anyway, I'm not a resident of Cary, although I've been a resident in the Cary area before the gravel pit was even there. It was a farmland. In fact, some of the farmers' cows would walk down the street. My question is, what benefits are we as residents on the southwest corner of the property, what benefits are we going to get? I mean, for utilization.
What, for usage? Are you an incorporated, or are you an unincorporated?
Unincorporated Cary.
Well, I know that any particular uses that we have here, part of our agreement is for anybody in Cary or Algonquin will have the same rights to this recreational park. I'd have to check on what unincorporated would be, but I mean, that's such a small area, I don't think that would be.
Right now, we're not proposing any fee for entrance fee or anything at this time. So whether you're a resident or non-resident, you'd have access where that parking lot is in the southeast corner of the property. You'd be able to access that.
Well, I'm on the southwest corner.
Correct. There isn't a fee proposed
There's no
right
fee,
now.
No fee?
Correct.
It was originally meant to be a no-fee, free type of a thing originally when it was set up, that it's a passive park.
I thought it would be like Crystal Lake.
No.
Not at this time.
Not at this time. It'll have some, I would hope that we'd be able to get some amenities in there. We've heard a lot about kayaks, canoes, and that kind of thing, and I think that that's a great direction to go in, but it's never, I don't think it's ever going to be like the Three Oaks Park. I really don't think that it's going to be like that.
And just for giggles, are you going to shoot fireworks off at this place?
That was proposed. Somebody had said that to me. Why don't you put a barge out there and have your fireworks out there? You know what? Anything goes. This is going to be a new gem for the Village of Cary. I'm sure we'll look at different ways that we can use it that'll benefit the entire community. So, anything's open right now. That could be a good option. Maybe have the 4th of July fireworks over there. The only thing I see is parking would be an issue.
Okay.
Sounds expensive.
Well, great. There will be no access from 1st, 2nd, or 3rd Avenue.
There will be no trail access, no. You'd have to come into the main entrance.
Yeah.
But we're going to hope that most people will come in from the north, from Hoffman Park, from the trail that will connect it, or from the main entrance off of Clayson Road.
Okay, well, thank you very much for hearing me.
Sure. Last one signed in, Julie Wagner. Okay, is there anybody else that would like to address the village board? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Alan Challey. I own the property on the northwest corner. I've got a little problem.
Okay.
The elevations have been changed, and every time it rains, it's flooding out. And this is going to affect your future commercial development. I brought some pictures with if anybody's interested in seeing them. But you could probably use your kayaks, because about where that road you want to put in, that's about what you're going to be able to use to get to it. So, I think before you worry about doing anything with it, we need to get the elevations right on it first.
Okay.
And
Could you give Eric the picture? Do you have pictures that you can give to him? Oh, we can get with Meyer and that.
Right here.
Yeah, we'll connect with Mr. Challey.
Are you sure?
Yeah. This property, right?
Mr. Challey,
He's talking about where we are going to propose the parking lot.
Oh, I'm just saying he lives.
Is right there.
I thought it was
That's what I thought, yeah.
It's up. He's at
Northeast corner,
the
northwest.
top northwest corner.
Right here.
yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's that little knockout thing. You see the little farm.
Thank you.
We have all your contact information. We'll Jake will
he
be in
has,
touch
he
with you.
knows how to
Yeah.
get a hold of me.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
but
you.
I think something really needs to be done with these elevations and stuff, because it's,
Where are you talking about? Because when Alan and I went on the tour, we were told there's some issues up at
And
the
they were
north
sort of
end
regrading things.
with, there used to be a lower depression there, and they're supposed to come back now and fix that. Is that kind of where you're talking about?
well,
He's on the
if you
north.
stand over there and look back, how are you going to fix it? Because it goes all the way back to where the trail is. You know, I mean, you're talking, they raised the elevations there roughly 2 feet all the way across.
It's up higher than this, right where that's
You know, all along the whole property there, every time it rains, if you go out there and look, the water's running back this way. You'll never, if you put your parking lot there, you'll never have to worry about oil or anything in the lake, because it's all coming this way.
Mr. Challey's property, that northwest
Mhm.
piece.
There's about 13 acres there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There it is.
So, and it goes,
So, is it flooding your property then?
yeah, it's flooding
Yeah.
my property.
Okay.
And that's where the
Yeah.
commercial will be.
Correct.
And it goes, my property goes just south of where the buildings are there.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
there it is.
you know,
We'll connect with
Just
Mr.
like,
Challey on it.
get that squared away
Sure.
before.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Challey.
Before we get the deed.
Yeah.
Let's figure it out.
Next, anybody? Come on. You could just state your name for the record, please.
Sure, it's Neil Sullivan, and I've lived here since '89. Just want to say you got some really smart people here tonight, because I'm the kayak manager at Bella, and I'm really liking this job.
Did you bring business card? Yes.
Hey, political announcement. Yeah, geez, I feel like I'm at home. So anyway, like I said, I got here in '89, and so I was here before the pit was. Got to actually ask that question, what's going to be that property? I asked that of United Builders at the time. They said, well, we're not sure. It could be another house. It could be all these other things. And then the pit came. And make this kind of short as space, but I never lived actually on the pit. I lived in Fox Trails, but off of it. I've been to all three of these meetings, and this is the best one by far, by the way. But basically, what these people had to go through for the last 20 plus years is illnesses, air quality controls, veterinarian bills, houses, their price of their houses plummeting there for a while. So one of the things that I would like to really see, and I'm sure the people who live there too, is, you know, they were kind of put up in a cage, a big cage around that place for years. I think it's time to knock the cage down, and I don't think they should have to pay for that. The permit to reduce that, those obstructions so that they can finally see that property that they were told about 20 plus years ago. That should be something that Meyer pays for, or at the very least, the village kicks in. It's only fair to them. They went through hell for 20 plus years. And I think this is great to have now. We all hope that it would come like something like this. And hopefully, by the tone of everybody here today, they kind of just want to make it simple. You know, we want a place to swim. We want a place to take our kayaks. We want a place to fish. That's all it is. We're not looking to build a water park. It doesn't have to be Disney World, you know, just a little simple thing. And lastly, if what I heard right was you're actually considering opening up this summer. So when it comes to things like the fishing and the kayaking, and even possibly the swimming, could you not look into something that would be of temporary use not long-term use until we can get the funds and whatnot together to build permanent structures, but to allow a temporary site that people can get their kayaks into, that they can go fishing, and that they possibly could swim. That's pretty much everything in my head. And please come to Cabela's for your kayak needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the village board? Please come up.
Hi, my name's Dave Leib, and I'm from 949 Chancery Lane. And back under the Steve Lamal regime way back when, there was an agreement with the Fox Trails residents that they were supposed to have their own independent access point for all those wonderful pleasantries that were spoken of. So somewhere around the time where the funds were allocated from Meyer for, excuse me, for the home improvement of that Fox Trails area, there was also an agreement to have an independent access point for those Fox Trails residents. The other thing I'd like to ask is that gray area above the parking lot, if you can see that, what is that?
What it says proposed, where the words proposed parking lot?
Correct.
That is, right now, that's property that resides within the village of Algonquin.
Right, but what's the long-term potential use for that property?
You know, they just rezoned that property from an industrial to commercial, so it would be like a restaurant, a store, something that might be able to, you know, sell to people that would utilize the lake, kind of a thing. We don't really know exactly. I don't foresee anything in the future. They have nothing that they're currently looking at. They were just updating their zoning, and this was just a piece of property that they had was zoned incorrectly. It's better to be zoned commercial than it would be in light industrial where they could have manufacturing.
Currently, it's owned by Meyer Material. The village of Cary does not own that piece of property. It's owned by Meyer Material.
Okay, so it's not going to be a parking lot. I mean, I have a big concern that you're going to back a parking lot up to all those houses, the back side of all those houses.
I think that's
just a call out.
Yeah.
That there's an arrow on that. So the proposed parking lot, there's an
See the
arrow.
arrow?
Right, but even still, even that existing parking lot where it is, you've got, I mean, almost quick access to an automobile while you're backing up to all those residents' houses. And so, I mean, it really kind of exposes those residents to crime. It's something to think about. I mean, I was just thinking about that as I was sitting here. All those residents in that area, you're right at the backside of their house. And, you know, we're talking about having police monitor this every once in a while, but
maybe that brings up the question whether there's going to be a gate on the access road at night.
well, even if there's a gate, all day long, you know, again, you've got a parking lot backing up to the backside of people's houses for people to, I mean, really basically do whatever they want. They can look, they can go take something, they can break in. There's a lot of exposure there is all I'm trying to say.
Okay.
So with that said, thank you.
Thank you.
To answer your question, Trustee Kostler, at least initially what we're suggesting is that we have a gate for the parking lot just to close access to the lot during the months that it may not be open. If we go with no winter access to close that off. We can consider, and we actually had envisioned a power gate that'd be on the same access control system that Village Hall and Public Works facilities are on. But we would have to invest in electricity service lines, cellular service, and the computer upgrades and the gate itself. But it's something that we're envisioning for the future. Okay. One reason we don't want to necessarily rush to put it up right away is that depending on what happens to that parcel that Meyer owns, we don't want to put the gate in and then have to move it because of the cost. Would like to put it in once and put it in right.
For the record, I asked Algonquin to donate that piece of property to the Village of Cary, or we'll pay $1. But that's been asked. We're eagerly awaiting that from Meyer, so we'll see. Next, anybody?
Point of order on what he spoke to. I haven't heard the terms partial 3 and 4 in this place, but I've been to the Algonquin Village meetings because they had a public meeting and I went. And right above where it says Clausen Road is partial 3, and that corner triangle up against the homes, that's partial 4. And they're going for rezone to B2, which is eliminating a lot of industrial junk that could go in there.
Right.
Which is a good thing. I don't know if they're going to get any buyers or not, because if you look at the site, it's not.
Yeah, I hear you. Please come up. You could just state your name, please.
My name is Barb Birmingham. Eric, you did a fantastic job. I mean, you really did. I think what everybody wants really is a family place to go, okay? You have an 11-year-old and you have a 6-year-old. Well, there's nothing really there for them, except fishing, if they like to fish. And I think that's what we're kind of looking for, is a diversity, is for, you know, kayaking, a playground, you know, something for kids to do, so that the whole family can go and have a good time. I mean, it's a great place. It's a wonderful opportunity. And I think we're kind of limiting ourselves by not having the availability to do this. A pavilion for a picnic. You know, it would be nice. And I think that's what Cary is looking for. And I know we can't have Crystal Lake. I mean, that's a given. But we can have something that the whole family can enjoy. And I don't, and like somebody else said, is, you know, maybe we're pushing this too fast. You know, there's a lot of proposals. We have to be able to afford these things. How are we going to do that? So, you know, are we, you know, pushing this too fast? I mean, I know you want to get it open, but there's a lot of things that could be improved upon with other parties. Maybe we should kind of pull it back a little bit and see if there's something more that we can do. I'm just saying that, you know, we really want to get a lot out of this. It's a great opportunity for Cary. And Hoffman Park, that doesn't have really much of anything either for families. It's a walking trail. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that we would just like to get the most we can out of what we have.
I understand. Let me clarify something our attorney just, you know, we're looking right now at the turnover date. And what we're trying to do is get some feedback from the community about what future things they'd like to have, because we don't have the finances or revenue source to do everything everybody wants to do. So when people kind of highlight what they like to see, and we can kind of see where things level out. But I think in terms of what you're talking about taking a measured approach into growing this facility, I think that's what the board is looking at, and that we want to make sure that we're able to accomplish these things on a very small revenue source for this. So we want to make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. And then anybody that goes there, even from our seniors, I was out there for a couple hours on Friday touring it out, and we got fried out there. I mean, it was so sunny and hot. There's no shelter. So we're talking about, do we put some small shelters, you know, around there so people can see cover during these sunny days, or for the seniors that are out there that there's adequate benches, and for stroller access and that kind of thing. So these are kind of the things that we need to figure out what's going to be the best. And part of this thing with the initial ordinance is so that we're safe. We want to make sure that we're opening up something that we could enforce. It's like building a beautiful new highway, but you're not going to stripe it. You're not going to put traffic signals or stop signs, and you're just going to let people go. Well, we have an obligation to, our first obligation to the Village of Cary is to provide a safe environment. So I think what these steps is to make sure that we are encompassing what everybody would like to see, come up with a plan that we could kind of chip off some of these things. I personally would like to see it get open as soon as possible so people can enjoy it, especially the residents in Fox Trails. They've waited very patiently. So by opening up for the trails, the picnic areas, and fishing, I think that's of the first thing. And then we could start looking at some of the additional amenities is you know, kind of what this meeting is about, and to make sure that we're providing the residents with what our vision is.
I mean, the proposals, this is going to cost money. And there's no guarantee. I mean, there's, you know, we can say this and this and this, but what it comes down to is affordability. I mean, will we ever be able to afford that? So
And that's something this board is very aware of. You know, we've got great opportunity here. We've got limited resources to make sure that these things get done. And, you know, part of this too is get all the grasses in. I mean, I don't think people understand the type of grasses that have been installed here. They're all various types of prairie grasses. We're only going to be maintaining one lawnmower strip on each side of the path around the entire park. And all the rest is going to be natural. So there will be no need for maintenance, you know, in long term. We may have to do some initial mowing, they were saying, just to cut the broadleaf weeds down. But other than that, give it some time to grow so we can see exactly what it is and see what people really want. When they start utilizing it, do I see this? You know, I think it's like running water almost. You see where people go and where they're kind of seeing what they are and see exactly how that works, rather than investing money to put something where no one's going to go to this fishing station or this. That's why this is a great opportunity for everybody to kind of voice their opinion and give us some insight as to what people want or don't want. And you bring up some very valid points, and I appreciate it.
I really think that it should be more family oriented with more.
What are the types of, just if I can ask,
Well,
what
a
type
splash
of
pad would be great instead of having to go to Crystal Lake all the time.
Well, the Park District is installing a splash pad at Caper Park.
Right.
They're taking
really?
down Timbertown, and there's going to be a splash pad there. So we will have a splash pad that you can get to
Because,
from the trail system.
I have 2 grandchildren, you know, and every time I want to take them somewhere, I have to take them to Crystal Lake. Because other than parks, which we've been to every single one of them, you know, there's nothing else to offer here.
Yeah.
And
What other, just if I could, do you have anything else, the place that you've been that you'd like to see for younger children?
yeah, nice playgrounds.
Got it.
You know, there's some really nice playgrounds around. That would be nice to add to that. I mean, at least it would be a playground. You got to have something to keep the kids occupied, something to do besides walking around on a trail.
Okay, great idea.
You know, that would be a little helpful. Also, if you're going to have a dog park, if you're going to have dogs, I really think you should have receptacles with bags.
Oh, the bag, yeah.
Yeah, that would be probably a really good idea. Just to help, not that people always use them, but that would be a good idea. And keeping it open in the wintertime, I think would be great too.
Anything else,
I'm
Barb?
done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to address the village board? Mr. Shalley?
You were just talking about all the grasses and stuff. When it gets real dry out, is there going to be some kind of buffer between the houses and like our buildings and stuff to keep this fire from, if you would have a grass fire, to keep it from spreading?
That's it.
Or, you know, I mean, if that thing takes off, you're going to have a pretty big fire out there. It's just something to think about. You know, you could get lightning started or anything. So
Thank you for bringing that up.
because years ago, we had a fire got in the fence line out there, and it almost got down into those woods years ago. So,
Okay,
okay.
thank you. Anybody else like to address? What's your name and for the village board?
Jennifer Crick, 315 Inverness, Cary. So I've heard a lot of, this is the preliminary, this is step 1. So in my mind, I'm already thinking, okay, what's step 2? I'm pretty sure you guys don't have that, but something to keep in mind is, as a resident, I want to see a timeline. Like, I don't want this meeting to happen, and then 6 months from now, we're still like, well, in 2016, that wasn't talked about, or it was talked about, because I could not believe that this plan was drawn up in 2016, and now 2 years later, we're like, oh, why didn't we talk about it between now and then with the grading and all of that? That just didn't make any sense to me. So I would like to see within the next several weeks, maybe a month, a firm timeline. Like, okay, we've had this meeting, next step is this, and where are we going to be? Because that's just how my mind works, and I don't want this to be forgotten. The second thing is, I've heard a lot about Crystal Lake, and I'm hoping that the village administrators aren't just looking at what Crystal Lake does, but we're surrounded by several towns that also offer lake usage. There's Lake Zurich, and they have a really cool park. They have Paulus Park. Wakanda, they have cool things where you can rent kayaks and things like that. So I think we reach out to other villages and kind of get away from looking at Crystal Lake, because as Barb just said, we're never going to be Crystal Lake. And the third thing, of course, I'm going to bring up is the park. Please don't say that we have the opportunity to do something unique. That's just the way it should be. Having an inclusive, adaptive park. It's not unique, it's just the way it should be. So if we're putting in a park, it shouldn't be an option to not be an inclusive park. We have a lot of kids in this town and surrounding towns that have special needs, that park would be utilized unbelievably, I would hope. At least I would recommend it. But Nizara is a great place to talk to if you need resources and things like that. But it's not a unique opportunity. It's just the way that it should be. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anybody else? Do you want to come up to the mic, please? You could just give us your name, please, for the record.
Scott Peterson. Do we have an end date on when this would be done with Meyer and all the construction out there? I have pictures of the back of my house that have that much dirt on everything, that I had to wash off all my plants and everything else. I know there's got to be construction out there, but I'm just trying to figure out when this will be done so we can finally maybe get my house power washed.
I believe within the next few weeks, it's going to be done. There are some challenges that they've had to do and some additional work to for the North Trail. Weather has been a huge factor. Out of the number of, I think the days that they've been able to work, what were the days that they scheduled and days were actually able to work was de minimis because of the rain and, you know, that's all. So they're working on it. We were out there for a couple hours on Friday. They've made some incredible headway. It's really cool. I can't wait for everybody to see it.
The overall thing's going to be great.
But they're kind of finishing up right now, the north end and kind of the south west end. They're kind of finishing up that and connecting the trail that's there. The last thing that they want to do is the parking lot and the driveway into there so that they don't want their big truck
out of it.
Right. So they're to the point now where we're within a couple of weeks.
Okay. Is there any, and when will Kerry take over? Do we know yet? It's still fluid?
Mm-hmm.
Until it gets done, then you won't take it over, right? You want to take it over?
Well, it's, yeah. Do you want to answer that?
Well, people may already understand this. This is a 10-year project. This was initiated 10 years ago to allow the site to be mined. Now we're at the point that Meyer agreed to a reclamation plan, a specific plan. It's not necessarily just the village's plan asking Meyer at this point to make certain improvements. That plan was put in place a long time ago. So we're at the point in time where they're prepared to convey the property to the village so it becomes a public site. That trigger date is June 1, was June 1. So they're prepared to convey it at any point in time. There's still some things that need to be cleaned up on the site, apparently, some final details.
Sure.
So relative to your issue, they are to be done shortly.
Right, okay, that's great.
You can almost reach it.
Right, I know, it looks great from the backyard. But the, you know, the road that you go on, and sometimes there's a truck every 15 minutes, and it's really dry out there, and I got videos of that's big, tons of dust clouds coming over and over. Is there a way in the future if they're still going to use that road along the side of where the subdivisions are?
Well, I think that road will soon become our access point, and that I don't think it's good. Eric, will that road be gravel, or is that going to be?
It's going to be grass.
Grass?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I don't really care. It's not going to be, 40-ton trucks going over every 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's that road that I think you're talking about there along the Fox Trails property line. It's just going to be a grass road, and periodically for maintenance if those vehicles have to access it.
I don't foresee that being an issue at all. And just would it be if I want recourse and I'm washing my windows and cleaning the back of my house, who would I go to for that? This is, I mean, I got pictures here. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I can get your address and pass it on to Meyer Material. I'd be happy to do that.
That'd be great. We got to see you after the meeting.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
Thanks.
Anybody else would like to address the village board? Can you come back up to the?
You just triggered something in my head, actually. At one of the last meetings prior, 10 years ago, the original phase, which was behind Foxcroft, we used to call Foxcroft, it was off of Clausen Road there, went over the 20-year period of time I think they were allowed. So the big talk was back 10 years ago is to prevent Meyer from going over the 10-year proposal. And if I memory is correct, if June 1 is the date and they do not fulfill that, are they not fined X amount of dollars? And if so, what dollars are tagged towards this project?
There's a fine provision in the ordinance, and right now the village has not made a decision on if there will be a fine or not.
Why would there not be a fine?
We'll be talking with the village board about that, on if Meyer Material will be fined.
Okay.
Anybody else want to jump in? One more time. Anybody else want to address the village board? Well, now at this point, I'd love for you guys to take a look at the exhibits that we have in this next room. Who's going to give out stickers? Somebody going to give out stickers? And kind of give it.
Can I just say something really quickly? I really like the fact that this was brought up about timeline of events and phases of activities. I need that as well. I really want to see some direction of where we're going. And I agree, we did start this in 2016, and here we are in 2018, and we're just kind of starting these talks now. So from the village staff, I need that. I need the timeline of events, the phases of activities. What I'm hearing is fishing, kayaking, and swimming seem to be the three most important things to people. And one of the emails we got also addressed costs associated with taxes. So that's something else I'm also curious about. As far as if the village is on the hook for almost $100,000 in property taxes once we've acquired this, and I want to know how we're going to pay for that. So this is just something that I need to know in the future, what we're doing with this property and where we're headed.
There will be no property taxes because that would be public property.
Well, but there are taxes owing on the property right now. We would not, Brian is aware of this, the village is aware of this. We have not taken the deed to the property at this point.
But once we do,
Right, so we will
according to
not,
this email that I'm reading,
we will not take the deed to the property until those taxes are addressed.
so next year?
Well, they'll be addressed very shortly.
Okay.
With the conveyance of the property. That would be a condition. Those are not the village's taxes.
Right.
Okay.
But it's a good point. There are taxes that are owing on the property.
Anybody else have any comments?
Maybe someone else wants to talk.
Conducting this meeting and inviting us all to share. And I've listened to a lot of things, and one of the things that would be important to me, in addition to kayaking and swimming and a park for grandchildren, is I like to walk. And I'm excited about the fact that I can walk around this lake, and it's a good length for me to walk. I would like it to be open all year round. I heard a couple people say that. I'd like to say that too, especially maybe not, I don't know if you want to do like organized sports with liability, like sledding and all that, but I like the idea of being able to snowshoe, cross-country ski, or walk around the lake in the winter if that's something that can be accommodated. Also, I have places that I walk that I need to maybe bring my husband with because I don't feel like I can walk there alone. And other places where I can go walking where I feel like there's enough security around where I can do that, And so I'm kind of hoping that I feel like there'd be enough monitoring by the police and the area is kept safe where I could feel like I can walk by myself if I want to. So
Could I have your name for the record, please?
Oh, sorry, Diane Chesky, 150 Mary Lane. Thank you.
One more? Anybody want to address the village board? Any trustees have any questions or comments?
I just want to thank all the residents for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. It's one of those things that it's a moving, we don't have everything figured out, but it's great to have your input, and we'll see what we can do with getting this going as quickly as possible.
I'm going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting officially, so that way the trustees can come out and talk with the residents, and I hope to see you guys in this room. Give us some of your dots and your best ideas, your top 5 ideas would be great. What?
Eric, do you have the dots? The dots for residents?
They're on the table.
We have
On the table.
You just let them know.
Yeah. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Hey, Scott, how you doing?
We are adjourned.
Yeah. I'll pass it on.